Uh, this is the last one for the five forces model. The fifth and the final force is the uh, intensity of rivalry among existing competitors. So this is often the most visible force, the one that people think of first when they think about competition. But it is important to understand that rivalry is shaped by the other four forces and by various structural factors within the industry. The high rivalry typically manifests as price wars, frequent product innovations, heavy advertising spending, and aggressive battles for market share. These competitive dynamics erode profitability. So when rivals are constantly cutting prices to steal customers from each other, the industry collectively destroys value. So when they invest in marketing wars that do not actually grow the total market, they are transferring money from shareholders to advertising agencies. The key insight is that competition is not always good for the competing firms, even when it is good for customers. So what determines the intensity of rivalry? Several structural factors are important. So first, the number of competitors and their relative balance. So industries with many competitors of roughly equal size tend to have more intense rivalry than industries dominated by one or two large players. So when there are many equally matched competitors, each one has sufficient strength to initiate competitive actions and none can easily dominate the others. So the airline industry, particularly at the route level, is a good example of intense rivalry among roughly comparable competitors. So second, the rate of industry growth. When an industry is growing rapidly, its competitors can gain customers by simply serving the growing market. So they do not need to steal customers from each other. So competition is less intense, but when industry grows slow or the industry is declining, the only way to grow revenue is to take market share from competitors. So this intensifies rivalry, often leading to price wars and aggressive competitive tactics. So think about the rivalry in the traditional newspaper industry, so which has been in prolonged decline. The competition for a shrinking pool of advertising revenue has been brutal. And third one, the high fixed cost and perishable capacity. So when industries have high fixed costs relative to variable cost, as airlines, hotels, and cruise lines do, companies face enormous pressure to fill capacity in order to spread fixed cost. On airlines said that flights empty generates zero revenue, but still costs money in terms of the aircraft fixed cost. So this creates powerful incentives to cut prices to fill seats, which intensifies the rivalry and makes it very difficult to sustain pricing discipline. The same logic applies to hotels, power plants, and any industry with high fixed cost and capacity that cannot be stored. And the first one, leg of differentiation. Uh, and switch cost. So when products are undifferentiated commodities, competition defaults to price. When customers can't switch easily, price transparency creates a race to the bottom. The both conditions intensify rivalry. The differentiated products with high switching costs give competitors some pricing power, which reduces the intensity of rivalry. The fifth, diversity of competitors. So when competitors have very different strategies, backgrounds, and goals, rivalry tends to be more unpredictable and intense. Different competitors may have different cost structures, different time horizons for profit, different strategic objectives. Some may be pursuing market share growth while others are optimizing for current profitability. This diversity makes coordination and implicit understanding difficult, increasing the likelihood of disruptive competitive moves. And sixth one, high strategic stakes. When a particular market is crucial to a company's overall corporate strategy, so when it is must-win market, so that company will compete extremely aggressively to maintain or gain position, even if doing so is unprofitable in the short term. So we see this in strategic competition between technology giants in markets like cloud computing, where Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have enough each competed fiercely and at great cost because the cloud platform is a strategic crown jewel, not just the business division. And seventh one is hard exist barriers. Sometimes companies continue to compete in an unprofitable industry because the cost of living is even higher than the cost of staying. The exit barriers include specialized assets that cannot easily be deployed. A steel mill, for example, is not easily converted to a different use. They also include emotional and strategic commitments, label agreements, and that make downsizing expensive, and the cost of liquidating or writing off investments. The high exist various keep firms competing even when profitability is poor, which maintains overcapacity and intensifies rivalry. Eight, price transparency and information availability. In industries where prices and competitive offerings are fully visible to buyers, the pressure to match or undercut competitors is amplified. The internet has fundamentally increased the price transparency across many consumer and business markets. Online price comparison tools, the procurement platforms with multiple supplier bar bids, and consumer review sites have all contributed to more aggressive, more informed buyer behavior, and consequently more intense rivalry. So it is also worth noting that rivalry dynamics are not fixed. They can change dramatically as a result of the other forces. So when a wave of new entrants flood on industry, rivalry intensifies. When economic downturns shrink total demand, rivalry intensifies because firms are fighting for a smaller pool of customers. So when a disruptive new substitute starts winning over customers, remaining competitors within the original industry compete more aggressively for the diminishing core. So understanding the dynamic interplay among all five forces. So how changes in one force ripple throughout and affect others is what distinguishes sophisticated five forces analysis from a simple five item checklist. Okay. Mm, okay. Here is the part three actually. Mm, okay. So before moving to the part three, um, maybe we have enough time. I hope. Okay, so before moving to the part three, I would like to say that I would like to say the limitation of the five forces model. It's very really important to apply this tool in a real world. So you must recognize and study for the limitation is also important. So um, Okay, but I hope it's enough time to explain it. So before going to limitation, I would like to say that I'll, just wait a moment, please. Maybe it can be the new paper. It's better. Yes. Okay, so I would like to say that using the five forces um, application and limitation. So now that we have covered all five forces, so let me talk about how to actually use this framework in practice. And also about its important limitation. The analytical goal is to assess each of the five forces as a high, medium, or low in intensity, and then integrate that assessment into an overall judgment about the structural attractiveness of the industry. So, how much opportunity exists to earn above average profits? An industry where all five forces are big the benign is highly attractive from a profitability standpoint. An industry where all five forces are fierce is a brutal competitive environment where sustained profitability is very difficult. So of course, most industries fall somewhere in between. Some forces are favorable, other unfavorable. So the skill lies in understanding which forces are most important, how they interact, and what they imply for the strategies for of different types of firms. So let me walk through the quick five forces analysis of the pharmaceutical industry for a major branded drug manufacturer to illustrate. Okay, good. So, pharmaceutical industry case. Okay, so in this case, first, what is the first of the five first model? Threat of new entrants, right? So let so we assume that this industry, what is the low or high of the threat of new entrants? Just think, just a guess. Uh, Actually, it's the my answer, my writing is not a perfect answer. It's but almost close to the real era, so relatively low. The why? The barriers to entry are very high. So developing a new drug requires 10 to 15 years and $1 billion or more in R&D investment normally. So regulatory approval process are extremely strict, right? The regulatory approval strict. And a strong patent protects also good for the company. Strong patent protection, right? Maybe, yeah, right. Okay, so strong patent protection creates legal barriers. Yes, of course. So to copying existing drugs. So what is the result? New entrant rate is low. It's logical, right? Okay, so we move on to second force. What's the second force? You guys memory? You guys know that? It's a bargaining power of a supplier, right? Power of what? Suppliers. It's moderate. Mhm. Because drug companies rely on chemical suppliers, contract research organizations, and manufacturing partners, but these are generally competitive markets with multiple alternatives. Some specialized inputs, like certain proprietary biological materials, may give specific suppliers more leverage. So, overall, moderate supplier power. And third, first is what? Bargaining power of who? Buyer, right? It's complex, maybe. So the buyer landscape for this industry is unusual. Mhm. So I'm gonna write it. Landscape for this industry is unusual. So individual patients have almost no bargaining power, right? So they buy what is prescribed to them. So, but institutional buyer is different. So insurance companies, government health system, pharmacy benefit managers like that, they have significant collective buying power, right? So especially as they have consolidated over time. So in countries with single payer healthcare systems, the government as a monopoly, its buyer has enormous leverage over drug pricing. So overall moderate to high buyer power in developed markets. What is the first one? Threat of substitute. It's also moderate. The generic drugs, which enter the market when the patient expires, are the main substitute threats, right? A good example is the what? Generic drugs. Okay, so biologics face biosimilar competition. So alternatives therapies, including lifestyle interventions and non-pharmaceutical treatments, represent substitutes for some conditions. For a drug without good therapeutic alternatives, substitute rate is low. So for drugs in competitive therapeutic categories, substitute rate is higher. Right. Good. And the last one, rivalry among competitors is also what? Maybe moderate. So this industry or the pharmacy companies generally do not engage in price wars. So because they compete primarily on clinical efficacy, the safety profits, and physician relationships. Each drug occupies um, uh, is maybe a somewhat distinct therapeutic niche. However, in categories where multiple effective drugs exist, the cholesterol-lowering medications, um, antidepressants, and diabetes drugs like that, the competition can be intense. So overall, it's moderate rivalry. So putting it all together, we make the general results for it. The branded pharmacy industry is structurally attractive, so because low entry rates, moderate supply uh, power is manageable if growing biopower. Mhm. And it's a moderate substitute and a moderate rivalry. So this structural attractiveness goes a long way toward explaining the industry's historically high profit margin. Okay, this is the in in a real application case. So I hope all students try to analyze the company, try to make the report like that. It's very useful, and it's really have to improve your skill to understand the industry organization and also your job. It's about okay. So we move on to the uh, limitation of five forces. So of course, this the Firefox Mozilla is powerful, but it has important limitation that any serious strategist must acknowledge. The first limitation is primarily a static framework. It analyzes the industry as it exists at the particular moment, but industries are not static, which means that they evolve, sometimes dramatically. So the five forces that characterized the music industry in 1995 were very different from those in the 2005 or 2015. Static five forces analysis cannot capture this dynamism. So strategists need to think not just about current forces, but about how those forces are trending and what they will look like us in 3, 5, or 10 years. And second, it focuses on industry level attractiveness but does not explain why some firms outperform as others within the same industry. So even in unattractive industries, some companies constantly earn above average returns. The Southwest Airlines is a good example. So this airline was notoriously profitable in an industry where most airlines struggled. Apple achieved some margins in the smartphone market that none of its competitor approach. The five forces framework does not explain this with an industry variation, so that requires a different level of analysis, particularly the resource-based view (RBV) of strategy, which we will cover in a later week. And third limitation is the framework assumes relatively stable industry boundaries, but those boundaries are increasingly blurry in the digital economy. So digital platform companies often simultaneously operate in multiple industries, so creating substitution threats that cross industry boundaries in ways that the original framework did not fully anticipate. So is Uber a transportation company, a technology company, or logistic company? And also Amazon, retailer, a cloud computing provider, or media company. So when industries blur and covers, the five forces framework needs to be applied with flexibility. And the first limitation is the framework treats all participants in each force categories as relatively homogeneous. But in reality, there is enormous variation within each group. So not all buyers are equally powerful. Not all substitutes are equally threatening. So not all competitors are equally capable. The strategic group analysis we are about to discuss address part of this limitation. The fifth, maybe it's the last limitation. The original formulation says little about the role of complements, products, or services that increase the value of your products when used together. The value of an iPhone, for example, depends enormously on the ecosystem of apps available for it. The value of a gaming console depends on the games available. These complementary relationships can be as strategically important as competitive relationships. Some scholars have argued for the sixth force, uh the power of complementum. So the Porter himself has resisted this modification. And despite these limitations, the five forces framework remains the most robust and widely used framework for industry analysis in strategic management, used thoroughly, so with awareness of its limitations. It provides a powerful lens for understanding competitive dynamics and their implication for strategy. Okay, so this is all things about the five forces model. It's a quite a long journey, isn't it? So we take a break first, then we move on to part three, strategic group and industry life cycle. Okay, let's take a break.